Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and respected professional from San Francisco, California, USA, Mr. Lior Klisman. Lior, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Lior is the founder and a conscious leadership coach. So, Lior, before we come to coaching, tell me about your journey. You've reinvented yourself multiple times across 7 countries. What has each reinvention taught you about identity and resilience?
The number one thing that it taught me about identity and resilience, that the lesson is you can't run away from who you are.
Correct.
That will be the first one.
Mhm.
Be who you are wherever you are.
Mhm.
And reinvention doesn't necessarily mean changing how you're being,
Yeah.
the way in which you act, the way in which you speak, the way in which you interact.
Mm.
Yes, there is some nuances from each culture. I adapt to that. That's why in this day and age, AQ, adaptability,
Mm.
becomes as important as emotional intelligence, or of
Correct.
course IQ. So that was the first and second lessons. But the
Mm.
third lesson was trust in yourself.
Yeah.
If you have full trust and believe in who you are and what you bring,
Mm.
just bring your authenticity. Meaning, don't try to be somebody else, be you,
Mm.
which
Mm.
goes along with the second lesson that I've just said. So
Mm.
those will be the three most important ones, I think.
How
Just
amazing.
remembering to be who I am along the way in reinvention has kept me sane.
Fascinating. What a great response. Thank you. Leo, as a founder who scaled a company from zero to a successful acquisition, what were some of the inner challenges you hid from the world at the time?
I think the first and foremost is I'm not good enough. You know, that pattern. I'm not good enough. I'm not
Correct.
smart enough. I'm not successful enough.
Mm,
I'm simply not enough. I
mm,
think as a founder, you have to hid it from your employees, certainly hid it from your customers,
mm,
from your investors, of course. Uh, so that will be the biggest one, the pattern of I'm not enough.
mm. And
Um,
sorry, go ahead, please.
no, no, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to ask you that what part of your founder journey or any founder's journey do you think most leaders underestimate until they personally experience it?
I think the self-critic and the self-judge, the
Mm,
self-doubt. Uh, it's hard to explain it to somebody who's never done it. So you have to
mm,
do it in order to know what I'm talking about. And
absolutely.
if you're currently, our listeners, if they're currently running a business,
Mm,
any type of business, for that matter, they're probably feeling those feelings from time to time.
mm,
Uh, so I think that's one of the biggest things, that self-critic. Am I doing a good enough job? Am I a good CEO material? Is the company doing well?
mm,
The numbers can look amazing, and you still feel not great about uh, your creativity, your competency, your skills. And I
mm,
think remembering that it's our shadow, that it's the back of the mind talking to us, trying to protect us more than anything else,
mm,
I think is
mm.
super important. I
Amazing.
know, I don't think.
Yeah,
At
yeah. No,
least
no,
for
but
me.
your experience is very, very valuable for my viewers and listeners. Leo, let's now talk about conscious leadership coaching. What does leading from inner alignment truly mean? And give me an example if you can.
Absolutely. So first, leading from an inner alignment means the person who I am outside of work is
Mm,
the person that I am in work.
mm,
Too often, and I was one of them, so I, at some points of my career, could have been at fault for this.
mm,
We have to put a mask.
mm,
That's going to your specific example request.
mm,
We have to put a mask, our work identity mask, who we are at work, who we are with our employees, with our customers, with our investors,
mm,
and who we are with our intimate relationships, with our community, with our friends. And oftentimes those masks do not align. Conscious coaching and inner alignment, meaning I'm aligned
Mm,
with who I am outside of work to who
mm,
I am inside of work. There is no difference in the personality. Just as I treat my friends, my community, my loved ones, is
mm,
going to be how I treat my customers, my employees, my investors, so forth and so forth.
mm.
So that's for me an inner alignment and
Okay.
an example of how can one be aligned
Mm,
and be the same person in both sides of the coin.
well said.
Uh, Unconscious leadership
Correct.
is I'm one identity when I'm working. I can be rude, I can be cruel, I can be tenacious, all
Mm,
those things. But when I come home, I'm a fluffy dog.
mm. Yeah.
Well, if I'm a fluffy dog at home, I want to be a fluffy dog at work.
Yeah.
Yes, I need to still be, of course, presentable. I still need to be achieving goals. I still need to be tenacious about doing business
Mm,
and growing the company and growing my team
mm.
and the surrounding, and of course, my family. But being aligned is being that one person.
Very interesting. So, very often I hear people say, what you see is what you get. Would you say that is inner alignment?
Not necessarily, because I think when you say what you see is what you get, you're agreeing with the status quo that who you are and you cannot change.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that.
Okay.
I think if I could change, anybody can change. You
Absolutely.
just need to have the desire to
Mm,
want to change.
correct.
That the change becomes less fearful from staying the same. So
Mm,
saying what you see is what you get is I don't want to change. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. I don't
yeah.
believe in that.
Very well said. Thank you. Leon, what are some of the silent pressures most founders never talk about publicly? And I'm a two-time founder, so I'm being able to relate everything that you are saying.
Mm. The silent killers, I would say. I think, you know, the typical suspect of, I don't know if this will work. I
Mm,
don't know if the business will succeed.
mm,
I don't know if I know what I'm doing, as a
mm.
founder, especially the people who are doing it the first time. The second time you learn from the mistakes of the first time, whether even if it was a successful,
Correct.
if even if it was successful. So I think still having that silence of, will it work? Again, the inner critic, again, the self-judge,
Mm,
but it's so lonely because a
mm,
lot of times you can't speak about it. You don't want to speak to your wife or your partner because you don't
mm.
want to scare them off.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to speak to your friends because you don't want them to see you in different eyes.
Mm,
And of course, you cannot tell that to your employees because you need to motivate them. That will be such a demotivator,
mm,
and let alone clients and so forth. So I
mm,
think having to hold it all together to make sure everything's okay and to say that everything is okay
mm.
is one of the silent death that
Okay.
founder, instead of sharing more and talking more and really authentically speaking. Now you have to do it in a structured way. You can't
Mm,
just go out to the world and tell everyone, oh my God, it's going to fail. But you can say, hey, I'm actually going through a rough time right now. The business is going through a rough transition. We're doing great, but there's a lot of things we want to be doing, and we're now in the midst of figuring how we can get to those goals, and they're not
mm,
easy.
mm,
A silly example.
mm. So then tell me, why do so many high achieving founders feel lonely at the top, even when they're surrounded by some really good people?
Because oftentimes they're afraid or worried to say the truth,
Mm,
to say what's really going inside, to say those limiting beliefs, the negative emotions, the hardships of running a business, what keep them up at night, what keeps them up at night.
mm,
And they can't talk about their friends, as I said, they don't want to see them in different eyes. Your loved one you might want to speak about, but you don't want to create tension in their relationship because that can create some tension in your intimate relationship. You, of course, can't tell that to the investors because you want them to continue supporting you. You can't tell it to your clients because they're the ones that paying the bills for you to have this company.
mm,
So a lot of times, such founders and high performing ones will seek coaches like myself and like many others
mm,
because that's their place, their safe space, their container where they can peel off those masks
mm.
and just be.
Very interesting. Your many leaders focus heavily on scaling their company. Yet, when I was reading about you, you also about scaling themselves. Why is
Yes.
scaling themselves equally important?
Because you is the company is you.
Mm,
If you're just scaling the company and you're staying at the same level, the company is going to outrun you.
mm,
The company will need somebody different than who you are because you're not willing to grow with the company.
mm,
So I think it's so important for founders, and
mm,
especially high achieving founders, to do the personal work, to align with their goals, their needs, their desires, their self limitations, their limiting beliefs, their negative emotions, as I've already said.
mm,
That's how they can keep being at the top at whatever level the business is going. They can
mm,
keep up with the business
mm,
rather than running after the business.
mm. What emotional blind spots do founders most commonly struggle with?
From what I see, one of the most common one is believing that everything is okay.
Mm,
I think that's a big red alert when you think it's okay. As you know, you've been a founder twice. I'm building now my fourth. It's never okay. There's always something going on. There, as they say, there's never a dull moment in running a
absolutely.
company.
Mm,
And if you think and say that everything is okay, you're bringing that energy to the business. Likely the business is going to plateau or go down.
mm,
It's like chess. You always want to plan 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 moves ahead. So I
correct.
think that's a big blind spot to cruise, to say, oh, we're doing great, revenue is up, we're growing, but not to think about what I call the what if scenarios.
Mm,
And it's a practice I do often, what if scenarios. And some what ifs can be a good what ifs. What if we triple our revenue, for example?
mm,
Some of them can be, what if we lose half of our revenue? What do we do
correct.
then?
Mm,
So the what if scenario, I think, is a huge blind spot for founders that they don't spend enough time
mm.
paying attention to it and running those models and scenarios to what happens if.
Very interesting. Can emotional intelligence be developed in someone who spent their life prioritizing logic and speed?
I think everyone can grow and enhance their emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
It becomes from an inherent desire to do so.
Mm,
So it's not just like they say about companies, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's the same thing about growing your emotional intelligence.
mm,
You don't go from 0 to 100.
mm.
You do 5%, then
Correct.
10%, and 15%, and
Mm,
20%. And little by little, you grow that muscle. It's just like going to the gym and you're growing your hand muscle. It's like growing a
mm,
muscle of connection to other people, of interpersonal dynamics, of communication dynamics,
mm,
and so forth. So I truly believe that everybody can grow their emotional intelligence.
mm.
What I see is not many are willing to,
Yeah.
because it goes back to what we said a bit earlier.
Mm,
What you see is what you get. That's when
correct.
you're saying, hey, I'm just a logical person. I will
Yes,
never be emotional. The
absolutely.
same thing.
Absolutely. Well said. How do you help leaders repair relationships that have been strained by years of stress and misalignment?
First, to end blame, shame, and guilt.
Mm,
First within themselves,
mm,
then within the person that they've had those conflicts with.
mm,
If we don't forgive ourselves first, if we don't bring the self-love and kindness and the awareness of where we played, because as the cliche goes, every coin has two sides,
mhm,
we tend to be victimized. We live in victimhood.
mhm.
I'm at the cause of something else, someone
Correct.
else.
Correct.
So things are happening to me instead. I believe that things are happening for me. And if
Mm,
I believe that things are happening for me, I can repair things that have had hardships in the past. Because I don't come and project my fears or my angers or my shame or guilt and so forth. I
mhm.
don't project you, the
Right.
famous word.
Mm,
I say I. How am I feeling?
correct.
How whatever happened made me feel. So I'm taking ownership of my own feelings before I start projecting my feelings onto others. So I
Mm.
think that's the way in order to repair. That's where repair starts.
Great response. Uh, your founders often equate resilience with overworking.
Hmm.
How do you help them to redefine what is resilience?
Yeah. Even though oftentimes they go hand in hand,
Mm.
if as a founder, I can't say that you're not going to be overworked. We
Mm.
all have been overworked.
Yeah.
Now, I separate overwork from being burnout.
Mm.
I can overwork. The resilience part for me is no matter how many times I fall, it's how fast I get up.
Correct.
So my resilience is keeping myself strong, aware, conscious,
Mm.
meaning I'm taking care of this entity, my body and my mind, meaning I meditate every day,
Right.
keeps me aligned. I do grounding practices, I do breath work.
Mm.
That keeps me resilient to deal with difficult things that otherwise, if I didn't have them, I would let anxiety overtake me, overwhelming, and then I would call it overwork. And because I feel that I overworked, I become burnout.
Mm.
So it's the first step. How can I take care of myself to be able to take care of my team, my clients, my community, my personal relationship? So it's by no means am I saying, hey, don't work hard if you're starting a company.
Mm.
What I am saying is don't neglect your personal needs
Mm.
for that, because at some point you'll likely call it overwork, and what happens next is
It's
burnout.
trouble. Absolutely. What are the early signs that a leader is operating from fear instead of clarity?
I think the biggest sign is impulsive decisions,
Mm.
being impulsive with decisions, not hearing the different viewpoints, not even hearing their own viewpoints. So, not even having the time to really think clearly, should I go route A, route B, or route C?
Mm.
And I make impulse decision. Another thing is I'm reactive.
Mm.
I react to things way too fast
Mhm.
instead of giving the space. Uh, as the great Viktor Frankl once said, between stimulus and a response,
Mm.
there is the space in between, and that's the space that we can make decision on. And truly believe in that, because
Mm.
if I have a stimulus and I react super fast, I didn't think, I let my emotions react,
Yeah.
and sometimes they're needed. But if I can take that space to really think how I want to react, how I want to respond, that means I'm doing it for more
Mm.
creative space, from an
Mm.
alignment space, and not
Mm.
from a fear
Mm.
space.
Amazing. What role does vulnerability play in conscious leadership? Give me an example if you have any, if you have a good one.
Yeah. First, I think vulnerability plays in conscious leadership by being open and able to talk about the feeling.
Mm.
For example, I'm working with a client currently,
Mhm.
and there is quite a conflict between that person and their co-founder. A big conflict, one will say. Not a conflict that is so big to break up the business, but is
Mhm.
also a conflict that is not far away from it. Through our work together, and it goes back to what I said, we realize, okay,
Mm.
if you can bring vulnerability enough so that you can name what you're feeling, how the other person is making you feel without saying you, without projecting what they did wrong,
Mm.
now you're creating a space where true and real conversation can happen,
Mm.
where it's undeniable. You cannot, it's unarguable. If I say, hey, Ashutosh, you made me feel a certain way, or then you can see that I'm blaming you. But if I
Mm.
say, Ashutosh, what you said right now made me feel XYZ, this
Correct.
is unarguable. This is how I feel. You don't
Mm.
need to try to solve it. I just
Right.
said I let it go.
Absolutely.
Emotion, energy in motion, I let that energy go.
Mm.
And if the other side can do the same thing, now we're having a true conversation where repair can start to happen.
Mm.
Easier said than done, of course, but that's the beginning of it.
Amazing. I have time for two more questions for you.
Yeah.
How do you help leaders notice the stories they tell themselves that limit their potential?
Yeah. First is recognizing their patterns
Mhm.
and naming them.
Right.
And then when they also started those patterns, and most of the time it's what I call, it's what is called inner childhood work.
Mhm.
We we develop some of our own patterns, but a lot
Mhm.
of our patterning comes from our domestication, from our upbringing, from our parents, from the surroundings in which we grew up, usually from the age 0 to 7.
Mhm.
As an example, so it makes sense,
Mhm.
if I had a dad or a father that constantly yelled at me,
Mhm.
I might have been able to develop a pattern that I yell at others,
Mhm.
but I might have developed an opposite pattern
Mhm.
that if somebody raises their voice, I numb and isolate.
Mhm.
So now I'm going through the world, and in any situation that feels overwhelming
Mhm.
or aggressive, I become numb, I isolate, I go into the cave. So it starts by understanding the patterns,
Yeah.
naming them, and only when we have the awareness, then we can move into transforming them.
Fascinating. And my last question for you, Lior. For leaders wanting to reinvent themselves personally or professionally, where should they begin?
The simplest way to begin is reading books about personal growth. There
Mhm.
is so many,
Correct.
so many books, and it will be even hard to name them all here.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
happy to send you a list that you can provide your viewers and listeners.
Mhm.
Second, if the books spark something within you,
Mhm.
then doing something like a workshop, which is just a couple days, can be a 1 day workshop, a couple day workshops, all the way to doing a retreat that is a week or a 2 week retreat, something that goes in depth about the personal growth. So
Mhm.
I highly recommend starting there, but start from a book, and then if that sparks of interest, moving on to actually doing workshops and retreats.
Mm. Wow. And on that note, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been. I mean, we started with three amazing tips from you about how you have managed to reinvent yourself and taught yourself resilience. And you said be learn to understand who you are. Second, I loved what you said as the adaptability quotient, and the third one you said was trust yourself. Thank you, Lior, for speaking to me about your journey, about so many different aspects of conscious leadership and uh, coaching. We spoke about blind spots, we spoke about emotional intelligence, and so many other aspects of resilience. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.